Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Today we're very fortunate to have Nasira Jamal who will be speaking to us after the Quran. But first we'll start the program with recitation of Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص. وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم لم تؤذونني وقد تعلمون أني رسول الله إليكم فلما زاغوا أزاغ الله قلوبهم والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. وإذ قال عيسى ابن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعده اسمه أحمد. فلما جاءهم بالبينات قالوا هذا سحر مبين. ومن أظلم ممن افترى على الله الكذب وهو يدعى إلى الإسلام والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. يريدون ليطفئوا نور الله بأفواههم والله متم نوره ولو كره الكافرون. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا هل أدلكم على تجارة تنجيكم من عذاب أليم تؤمنون بالله ورسوله وتجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالكم وأنفسكم ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ويدخلكم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ومساكن طيبة في جنات عدن ذلك الفوز العظيم. وأخرى تحبونها نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا أنصار الله كما قال عيسى ابن مريم للحواريين من أنصاري إلى الله قال الحواريون نحن أنصار الله. فآمنت طائفة من بني إسرائيل وكفرت طائفة فأيدنا الذين آمنوا على عدوهم فأصبحوا ظاهرين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you very much for that beautiful recitation. We're now very fortunate to have Nasira Jamal, who will be speaking to us on the topic forgiveness, the most powerful F word. Ms. Jamal has been working on building her consulting business her entire career. As a single parent and low-income earner, she's brought herself out of a life of poverty to achieving well over $50 million in sales volume over the last 10 years. She now runs a private practice, helping her clients achieve massive success on a personal and professional level. Nasira was born in a small village in Kampala, Uganda, and migrated to Canada with her family when the Idi Amin regime ordered them out of the country. She was the fourth of 5 children that her parents raised in Kitchener, Ontario. Though she was trained in early childhood education, her passion for entrepreneurship was fueled by her ambition and drive, and she became an award-winning realtor by helping people realize their dreams of home ownership. She's implemented the healing practices on herself and was able to document huge positive shifts in her own life. She's passionate to teach what she learned to help others in all areas of life, and her passion to empower others to not only find their own light, but to help each person live a more enriched life that is full of abundance, passion, and love. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nasira to speak on this topic.
Thank you, Mika. That was a great introduction. 30 years ago, I was married for a very short time, roughly 18 months to be exact, actually. It was one of the most difficult times in my life. And much of what happened then now seems like a very bad, sad Indian movie. It was really a saga of despair. And it was like really living in a nightmare. It was a relationship that had gone bad. I had no family, no friends. I was in a new country, and there was a ton of emotional abuse that I was really dealing with. But now looking back, I know it was the best thing that ever happened. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nasira Jamal. And for those who don't know me, I am a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a wife, a business owner, and most importantly, a mother to a special needs child. You see, you and I are no different. We may have different circumstances, life experiences, titles, but in essence, we are actually the same. We are all creations of the Almighty. I want to first of all thank you for taking some time out of your day to come and hear me speak. I'm passionate about what I speak about, and I really want to empower you to find your own light. I've spent over 10 years learning about the law of attraction. This is a universal law that states that like attracts like. But really, when I was looking at my life and I was learning about the law of attraction, I was not really seeing how the despair that I was living or the things that I was going through and what I wanted were so drastically different, and I couldn't figure out how to connect the dots. So in today's talk, I'm going to be talking about forgiveness, but there's a very big reason why. And this is what we're going to really dive into today. And I want you to keep an open mind and look at this as not my story, though I'm going to reference what happened to me in my life. I want you to look at it as nuggets of information of how you can apply the learning from my story into your own, because we all have our own stories. We all live a life that is before us with circumstances and conditions. But really, what the law of attraction says is that like attracts like, and we're going to talk about what that means in terms of vibration. And so what I want to really talk about is this thing called forgiveness, and why does it really matter if we want to live our most abundant life? I actually had the privilege of writing a book called Life Reset, in which I discuss the exact strategies to not only attain professional abundance, but personal abundance. And in abundance, I'm not really talking just about financial gains. I'm talking about an abundant life that means that you can live in peace and harmony. And the four-letter word that I feel is the key that connects us all is through love. And so in today's talk, I want to really relate how all of this comes together. As I begin, you might be wondering, well, what was that thing that I said initially that it's the best thing that happened to me, though you might be hearing all of the negatives that I was talking about. You might also be thinking, how does my story relate to this whole topic of forgiveness? And the more important question you might be asking yourself is, how does this help you, particularly you sitting in that chair listening to me today? Well, you see, we all have our challenges. I mean, this is really our own growth. We are humans in this experience, what we call this earth life. And we are given certain challenges because it is part of our growth and our evolution. It is a way to bring us to finding our purpose, to finding out how we can serve, how we can fulfill the mission of God, which each one of us has. And how do we do that is the main question. How do we figure out what is that mission, what is that purpose, and what is holding us back from that exact roadmap that we're on? And so I want you to think about this, because though our stories are different, our experiences are different, there's some things that are very similar for all of us, which is our emotions. So you can feel, just like I can or I do, feelings of anger, resentment, worry, sadness, disempowerment, disengagement. And also on the positive side, how I and you can feel love, joy, compassion, harmony. You see, the best thing that happened to me in all of those experiences 30 years ago was that I learned the art of forgiveness. And today I want to share with you how you can actually experience this and make it part of your life so that you have the ability to move on from where you are to living even a more abundant, rich life. So my question to you today is, what are those emotions that are holding you back? Do you have an apology that you're waiting for? Do you have an apology that needs to be given to somebody? What is separating you from the feelings of love, compassion, peace, harmony? What is that one thing that is disconnecting you from bringing all of this together? And let's talk about that. So, did you know that every experience that we have, good or bad, has emotions attached to it? Nikola Tesla says that if you want to learn or find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Everything, even ourselves, is made up of energy, and it's vibrating at a certain frequency. So if I have an experience, good or bad, it has an emotion that's directly attached to it, and it's vibrating in my subconscious mind. So let's say somebody says something really bad about me. Now, it's terrible, makes me feel really bad, but what can I do about it? I can't change the fact that somebody has said something. I can't change that experience. But what I can change, what I have the power to change, is the emotion that's attached to that experience. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's all well and fair. Of course, there's attachment, an emotion that's attached to it. But the biggest question that comes up, and a lot of my clients get frustrated at this point, is the question of how. How do you release this emotion? No one teaches us that in a practical way. So how many of you here today have been taught forgiveness? Have you taken a class in forgiveness? Is there such a thing as getting a degree or a PhD in forgiveness? Well, in my experience, I've not heard of anything like that, though I hope and I pray that our schools will incorporate some form of teaching a practical skill of forgiveness so that people can live in a way that will free them. But for now, there is no such thing. So we want to figure out, how do you forgive? What is that actual process? Because no one has really taught us that. And if we can't learn a skill and practice it, we can't actually become good at it. So for me, this has become a passion of mine, to be able to teach the art of forgiveness, because in my life, this is what freed me. This is what actually made me be in a place of empowerment, to feel like I had control over my life and that I was not a prisoner or a hostage with those emotions that I was feeling. So let's first start out with defining forgiveness. What is the actual definition of forgiveness? Psychologists generally define forgiveness as a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. So what does that mean? Forgiveness does not mean that you're condoning or excusing that behavior, but it is a practice to release the emotions and feelings that are attached to that exact hurt that you're feeling. Because again, the experience cannot be taken away, but the emotion can. So if we don't really learn how to practice forgiveness, how do we become good at it? How do we know that this is the way to do it if we're not been taught? Because you see, when you hold on to past grudges or negative feelings or hurt feelings, the problem is that it becomes part of your cellular memory. It becomes part of your subconscious, it becomes part of your belief patterns. And these are patterns that are not serving us. These are patterns that are debilitating our power. God has given each one of us a very strong, powerful place as co-creators with him to create a life that is befitting, one that is empowering, one that helps others. But when we don't know how to do it, we become disempowered. And so I want to really talk about this because you may be at this point feeling stuck, feeling disempowered, feeling disconnected, sad, depressed, unworthy. You see, we're in a place right now with COVID-19 where all of these emotions may be coming to surface because we feel we're losing control. And the fastest way to change any of these emotions is if we learn how to practice the art of forgiveness. This is in my own experience, this is my own opinion, but I wanted to share it with you because it has had an immense impact on my life and those that I help through my coaching business and where I help them to achieve that level of freedom. Let's talk first, though, about what the Quran says. Quran says Allah is Al-Ghafur. What does that mean? That he is the most forgiving. This name occurs in the Quran more than 70 times. And we ask for forgiveness from God, Allah, all the time, right? Like we will always be sort of seeking his forgiveness if we feel that we've done wrong, or if we're feeling that we need some sort of help from him, we will ask for his forgiveness. And just as important it is to believe in God's mercy and forgiveness, it is also necessary to base human relations on forgiveness. See, we can emulate one of his many attributes, and in this one, Al-Ghafur, which is the forgiveness attribute of him, by forgiving those who have wronged us. So the Quran says forgiving each other, even forgiving one's enemies, is one of the most important of Islamic teachings. In the Quran, God has described the believers as those who avoid major sins and acts of indecency, and when they are angry, they forgive. How important it is to forgive is such a key element to living an abundant life. Here's one very specific way that I want to teach you that I learned to release emotions or feelings of anger or resentment or anything that's negative that is holding you back. And this is something that I've practiced and I continue to practice. So I want to share this with you because I want you to have a strategy going right out of the gate when you end this talk to go and do this exercise, because I promise you it will be life altering. So what I do if I have certain feelings of resentment is you take a piece of paper and you write down the problem, the incident, or the negative feelings that have come about from a certain situation. As you begin to write this down, you are reliving the memory of it. So you're bringing it from your subconscious mind to your conscious mind. And from writing it down, you are bringing the energy from your arm to your hand to your fingertips as you begin to write. So what happens is that the energy is being transferred, that emotion is being transferred from your hand to the pen to the paper on which you write. Now, it doesn't mean that the emotion is going to be destroyed here. It just means that it's now being transferred from your subconscious mind onto that piece of paper. The next step is to actually safely go to a place where you can burn that piece of paper. Now, just note here that energy cannot be destroyed. Energy can only be transferred or transformed. So in this act of writing and burning that piece of paper is just changing the emotion. It is actually changing the energy of that emotion. Now, people ask me all the time, well, how many times do I have to write this down before I will feel that freeness? Well, it depends on the intensity of the circumstance or the emotion of what you're feeling. So if you're feeling a very high resistance to that emotion, meaning it's harder for you to let go of it, you are going to write it 4, 5, 6 times. And I've done it more than 10 times if it's been a really a severe emotion that I'm trying to release. Sometimes it only takes 1 or 2 times to release it. But what you will notice physically is a release. You will actually feel lighter. Because now that you've released that emotion, your subconscious mind is not holding on to it. Your cellular memory is going to change. Based on that circumstance or that memory of that incident, your cellular memory is going to change. And then what you feel is this lightness in your heart. And so this is one of those things that I did back in the day when I was feeling all of those emotions from the life experiences that I had in that marriage. And I am going to dig a little bit deeper into this in just a moment so you understand how this forgiveness has actually helped me release the emotions, because there were many. So as I said, you can move this energy or the emotion out of you. And because energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can only be transferred or transformed, you're going to practice this daily. Now, it depends on, again, what you're trying to release. But as you practice it more and more, you will find that you are going to release more and more of what is holding you back. Now, I want to share with you a chapter in my book that I wrote called Forgiveness Will Set You Free. And the reason I'm going to read this chapter to you, it's a very short chapter, it's only going to take a few minutes, is because I share in there 5 very specific strategies of forgiving. What you can do to truly release yourself of all of that holds you back. Because I do want to point out that if you are looking to manifest a life of abundance, if you're finding that things are not coming towards you, perhaps you are finding that though you are asking for it, you're trying to be positive, but things are still not coming to you, forgiveness is going to be one of those things that is going to actually release what is holding you back. And that's why I want to share this chapter with you. So I will do that now. And the chapter is chapter 10 in my book called Forgiveness Will Set You Free. So I was reading an article in Good Housekeeping and came across an interview that the editor did with my dear friend, Ellen DeGeneres. And I was touched by her words. Fear makes people defensive, aggressive, and judgmental. But if you can see that we are all different, our basic needs are all the same. We all want love, safety, and understanding. Then once you have that, it's easy to be kind. Life is comprised of hurts and troubles, harsh words, and moments of anger and unexplained silences that speak louder than words. As we navigate through life's challenges, we all have 2 choices. We either take the road that makes us happy or the road that makes us miserable. The vibration of holding on to grudges is so low that as long as you hold on to that frequency, all other experiences with the same low vibration will come down to meet you. As the old saying goes, when it rains, it pours. Like most people, life dealt me many circumstances that gave me plenty of reasons to not forgive my transgressors. And like most people, I held on to that hurt far longer than I should have. But what I learned was that this futile exercise was hurting me more than anyone else. I recall that when I was sent home after my failed marriage, I hated my mother-in-law. In fact, I would curse her daily and wished her nothing but harm. I could not fathom forgiving her for all the pain she inflicted upon me, and for years I was consumed with this hatred. One day I came across a wise old man who was in the post-surgery hospital waiting room where I had been asked to wait with my son. He looked like he may have been in his 80s. He was a soft-spoken gentleman. He wore dark slacks and a baby blue golf shirt. I remember clearly how calm he looked. In fact, his calmness filled this daunting hospital waiting room. We started to chat and he told me about his grandson who was in the operating room who had had a heart attack. I told him my son was having his tonsils removed. We chatted about the weather, the hospital staff, and his recent parking violation. The first time in 64 years, he quipped. He asked me about my son, and as I was talking, the topic of my mother-in-law naturally came up. I told him how she had hurt me and how I couldn't let the pain go from my heart. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he looked at me with the wisest of eyes and said, "Forgiveness is like setting a prisoner free. But when you do, you realize that the prisoner you set free was yourself." He continued, "Sweetheart, you are too young and beautiful to live in a prison. Let go and let God." We were both silent for the rest of the afternoon, and this was a huge lesson for me. That night, I pulled out my journal and wrote this, June 12th, 2007. "Dear mom-in-law, I'm writing to you today to forgive you. I have now realized that the only reason you were so unkind to me is because you were feeling unloved. I pray that you keep well, and from today onwards, I hold no more grudges. We met for a reason and we parted for another reason. May God always bless you." This was the most freeing exercise I have ever done to date. It was like a ton of bricks was lifted from my shoulders. Over the years, I've gone back and reread that letter many times. It reminds me of the profound effect it had on me. It also reminds me of the wise old man who helped me get out of my own prison. No matter where you are in life and what you want to accomplish, your journey will be a weighted one until you learn to free yourself of all the hurts that you hold on to. There are many techniques one can explore to begin the process of forgiving. One of these techniques, which I came across a few years back in an ancient Hawaiian practice called Ho'oponopono. It stands for, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and I thank you." I've incorporated this practice into my daily routine and have seen huge benefits. Chanting these 4 phrases brings about a clearing or cleansing that leaves one feeling light and free. These words carry the highest vibration, and when uttered consistently, bring about an energy shift that attracts a similar vibration in return. I suggest that if you're feeling hurt or bothered by something or someone specifically, then begin by saying their name and repeating the 4 phrases. For a general cleanse, you can chant the phrases and release it to the universe at large. You will begin to notice a profound shift, both in how you feel and how you react to situations that may be difficult. I've also been inspired by the works of Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra on this topic of forgiveness and would like to share the following 5 steps to help you release the emotional weights that may be holding you down. Step 1, let go of the past. Don't allow your past to consume your present. Remember, you are in full control of your experiences. You can choose to replay your history and live a life of chaos, or you can choose to make new memories worth living. Make peace with your past and let it go. Step number 2, be kind. Being kind trumps being right. Look at each situation with a mindset. Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Step number 3, don't beat yourself up. All too often, we are hardest on ourselves. Acknowledge your hurt feelings and let them pass without harsh judgment or criticism. Be gentle with yourself. Step number 4, lead with love. When you speak the language of love, even the deaf can hear you. Remember that sometimes when people are reacting in anger, they are only crying out for help. Consider this an opportunity where you can show them love and compassion. Step number 5, live in the moment. The moment is now. The moment of now is your power. When you consciously learn to live in the moment, you will begin to enjoy the splendor of every minute. When you fully embrace the art of forgiveness and practice it into your daily life, you will notice something incredible. Something incredible. Manifesting your desires will be accelerated, and you will attract the goodness that life has in store for you. There is nothing that exists outside of you that is more powerful than you. Remember, you are the pilot, the director, and the orchestrator of your life. You are the you in universe. Live a life that you are proud of so that the legacy you leave behind is far greater than the one you don't. Remember, the best is yet to come. In closing, I want to invite you to practice these strategies that we've talked about, just as I did. Incorporate the art of forgiveness into your daily life so that you can practice it every day and reap the rewards from it. And then teach others the art of forgiveness. As you transform this energy, what you will find is your life will be full of peace, harmony, and joy. And you will attract an abundance of goodness because you have changed your vibration. I thank you for listening to me today and giving me a chance to be part of your life and sharing these precious moments with you. If there are any questions at this time, I'd love to answer them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much thank you very much for your talk, and hopefully the Q&A will be an interesting session as well. So there have been a few questions which have come directly to me. Firstly, what do you think is the role of faith when it comes to forgiveness? Many of the things that you've mentioned are applicable to people of all faiths or none. Do you think that faith plays a particular role, and if so, how?
So with faith, the thing is, when you have a faith, whichever religion, whatever you believe in, even if it's not a religion, it could be a concept. Faith is what brings belief. So when you have faith and you have belief, then you can connect the two in terms of the forgiveness piece, where you know that if you release this forgiveness or you release the emotion, then that faith just becomes stronger. You see, we are all co-creators, and no matter what you believe, there has to be some level of faith that has to begin the process of forgiveness. If that makes sense, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, well, we'll see if the person comes back with something else. Another question, would it be better to talk to someone if you're angry with them in order to forgive the situation? If writing is keeping it to yourself, how does that help resolve the situation?
Okay, so that's a really, really good question, because a lot of people will want to hash it out, right? You want to talk to the other person if someone's hurt you, and there's nothing wrong with talking to the other person. But the thing here is, remember that whatever's happened is now in your subconscious mind. It becomes cellular memory. So the reason you're writing it down and doing that is just for yourself. It is to release the memory of it, to release the emotion of it, because not the memory, sorry, you release the emotion of it. The memory stays, but you're not now attached to that emotion of hurt, of anger, resentment, feeling of unworthiness, whatever those emotions are. So the writing of it is transforming the energy behind the emotion. Of course, always, if you have somebody to talk to and you can go to them once you have calmed down, once you are not in the point where your discussion or your talk will be based out of anger, because you lose the message. When the voice rises, the message dilutes. You got to make sure that when you do speak to others, if you are having a problem with them, is to go with first leading with love, leading with the openness of understanding. Everybody has a perspective. Everybody has their own viewpoints. And it's not about, battling this out saying, I am right. Remember, to be kind is much better than to be right. And so when you lead with that, the natural flow is feelings of contentment and peace, even if it means that you just said your point. You wanted them to know how you felt, and that's okay. So I think, and of course, talking is important, but the exercise that I talked about is really for yourself, is to release the prisoner that's within you, which is the emotion.
Thank you very much. Let me ask one of the questions from YouTube. Does forgiving someone mean you have to continue some sort of contact with them or be civil to them?
Very good question. So again, this comes up too. So see, we create what we want to create in our life. Sometimes what happens is there are people in our circles that don't share our vibration. And they need to, not that anything is right or wrong. Everybody's on a journey. And so I don't want to say because they're on a low vibrating place that they're any less. It's just that that's part of their journey of growth and evolution. But when you talk about, should we still contain that relationship, it will be dependent on your own vibration. So you don't have to continue as long as you do it with love. It's not like giving somebody the silent treatment and saying, well, you know what, I'm just not going to talk to you anymore. And if you show up in a room, I'll walk the other way. See, that is actually affecting ourselves more than the other person, because we're holding that emotion, that negative emotion, which is that vibration. And so you decide of who is going to be in your circle. And as you raise your vibration, what you will find as you work on this, as you begin to be more aware of what your vibration is, people that don't align with it, remember the law of attraction says like attracts like. And if they're not in that alignment, they will naturally fall away. And it'll happen in a very simple way that it'll just be very easy. If there's a point where you have to make a point by not being with somebody, you got to look within as to what that emotion is, because there's still layers of emotion that have to be released.
Thank you very much. Then another question is live. So let's ask Ahmed, who's live.
Say that again. You got cut out.
He's live. He'll ask it directly. 1 second. He's just joining.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. The truth and reconciliation process in South Africa. What do you think of that? I mean, is that a right way of going to forgive somebody who has done so much damage to you and your country in the past? It is a very controversial issue, and there has been a lot of criticisms by many people later on.
So when you talk about certain things outside of us, like whether it's our government, whether it's our country, and I'm unaware of the African situation, like in terms of the exact implications, but when you look at anything that's happening outside of us, the whole journey is within us, right? So we don't condone behaviors that are not ethical, not moral, that are not serving the community, in a way that's going to help the community or the people of its country. But what you want to look at is, how can you be the power, the empowered voice in creating a space for your own in a place of forgiveness? So you don't condone the behavior, but you can look at it and say to yourself that I don't condone the behavior of that, but I'm not going to attach my emotions to that because it's robbing me of my empowerment. I hope that makes sense.
No, but how? Because I mean, in that case, there were like huge number of people, innocent people, were killed and literally murdered by the apartheid regime. So, so where would you like forgive? How much? I mean, do you say, okay, that's fine, you can forgive those who killed thousands of people in apartheid South Africa? Would you accept that?
So I think for me, the way I've learned it and the way I see it is, I had a very close relationship with a woman that her daughter was murdered. And we had the ability to speak to her. And when she met the offender, she actually looked at him and said to him, "Son, I forgive you." Somebody had killed her daughter. And we asked her after the fact, what happened? Like, how could you do that? If that was me, I don't know if I could do that. And what she said was, I don't know what provoked him to do that. Clearly he was suffering, but I cannot be hostage to this feeling because I want to love my daughter, even in death. In life, I loved her, I raised her, I've lost her. I can't do anything to get her back. But what I can do is control my emotions, because that is going to be the one that's going to free me from this, rather than holding on to the negative feelings. And so what you're saying is thousands of people have been killed. And no, of course, this is totally not right, totally incorrect. But not forgiving them is going to do what good to you or to the community? It's going to hold a negative emotion, which means the vibration is going to be low, correct?
So what is justice then?
Well, justice in itself is, from the country's perspective, it has its rules, right? God in himself is just. We believe that God is just. Justice will be served. If we look at the tragic life in Karbala of Imam Hussein and what happened, it wasn't right. We know that, right? It is still, justice needs to be served, but we are not providing justice. God will provide justice. We have to ensure that we live in a state, in an empowered state, where we can continue to do the good work so that we can raise the vibration of the entire planet by the work that we do. And forgiveness is one of them.
So there should be no punishment in a country.
Sorry?
There should be no punishment for criminals in a country. Then we just forgive them.
No, I'm not saying that. The country has its own rules. We have rules in Canada about if you murder somebody, they go through due process, right? So I'm not saying, I'm not in the judicial world of how that is brought about with any kind of situation with people that are, let's say in your case, so you're talking about people that are killing people. There is due process. But what I'm talking about today is freeing ourselves of the emotions that hold us back. And that's where forgiveness comes in, not the actions. They're not forgivable from that perspective until justice is made or justice is created.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question. We tend to forgive people, but not forget. And that always remains in our mind. What do you think about this?
Yes, absolutely. So the process of forgiving is to release the emotion that's behind it. We talked about that because, in the writing exercise, you're burning it, right? You're burning the emotion. You never forget, or it dilutes in your mind, but you have a memory of it. But what you don't have attached to it is the emotion, because that is the vibration. The emotion is what holds the vibration, not the memory. And that is why it's so important to dilute, to transform that energy to something else, because otherwise it will be debilitating. It will cause more things of that low vibration to come into your life. And that's why when you learn about vibration and frequency, how powerful it is to learn that the emotion is I call it in my book, the GPS. It's your GPS. It tells you, are you, are you closer to God or are you away from God? God is love. The emotion of love is the highest frequency, which is God, or light, if you believe in light, or whatever that higher power is. And any feelings of negativity, whether it's anger, resentment, worry, all of that negativity is the furthest needle away from God or love or light. And so you don't forget, but you take away the emotion, and therefore you achieve the higher vibration. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you very much. Now a question from Facebook, from Sukaina. Is there a certain stage you need to be at to be able to forgive someone? Can people not be ready to forgive? Surely it has to come from within for it to work.
Absolutely. So it's like this, where you have to work on it. Like I said, if you practice this and you're just doing it because it's just rudimentary, like I'm just going to do it because she told me to do it, but I don't really feel it, well, then it's going to take you much longer. So you do have to have some form of wanting to let it go, wanting relief from that heaviness of that feeling of that hardness in your heart. You do have to be at a place where you're ready. But I don't say that just because you're not there that this won't work. I would say to you it's baby steps. It took me a long time. Remember, this was 30 years ago. I shared my story with you of this life that was very disempowering. And it took me many, many years to write that letter in 2007. But I was working at it. I was working at my understanding vibration. I was understanding how this world works. Why is it that my life was so broken? Why was it happening? And it was happening because my vibration was low and I had to work on it slowly. And as I began to see this, as I began to notice, oh, if I change how I'm thinking about a certain situation, all of a sudden something better comes along, then I began to believe it more, like, oh, this stuff really works. And as more I do it, the closer I become to getting more positivity rather than the negativity, and life began to change. So yes, absolutely. You can work on it at any stage, but you do have to have that belief that you want to make it work.
Thank you very much. Another topic now, another question now from YouTube, which reflects partially on a previous question, but I think it's still worth asking. Thanks for an inspiring talk. How can we forgive the unforgivable, like Hitler, Saddam, or Idi Amin?
Okay, so again, I think we're talking about, you know, certain the acts that they did, right, are unforgivable from our human perspective. Like, we can't even imagine. But look at God. If God is most forgiving, and if we are trying to be God-like, meaning his attributes, if we can learn from something, it's not to forgive the act of Idi or Saddam Hussein or Idi Amin or any of these dictators that are out there that have caused harm. It is not so much about, you know, saying, well, should we forgive them? Is it our place to forgive them? I'm not sure. But is it holding you back from living a life of empowerment? Is it showing you, see, as humans, we learn in contrast. In order to know night, we must know day. In order to know happiness, we must know sadness. In order to know what's right, we must know wrong. And so can we look at this experience, this earthly experience, and say, there are certain things that have happened that are completely wrong, morally, ethically, the compass is off. But we can then look at it and say, but now we know if that is wrong, then there's another side to this, which is right. And can we live a life from that empowered state? See, it's not so much that we need to forgive all of that that's happened, unless you're holding it as an emotion. It doesn't mean we can't have an opinion. We can have an opinion saying that was wrong. What he did was wrong. But are we holding an emotion that's holding us back? I hope that makes sense.
Thank you very much. That was great. That was great. I'm just going to have one more question. We've had lots of questions so far. There's one more question. Let's see how this goes. Actually, two more questions. Okay. As people of faith, we ultimately believe all struggle comes from God. So shouldn't we need to forgive God at the end of the day, based on what you said? And isn't that different to forgiving a person?
Okay, very good question, because I actually dove into this for my own life because I was mad at God. Everything that was happening to me, I blamed God because I kept saying, well, how come I got divorced? How come I have a sick child? How come I don't have money? How come I don't get the job? So yes, so we can look at it from our human perspective and say, well, I'm mad at God because God is doing this to me. But I want you to think a little bit different. God is love. God is mercy. God is everything that is most powerful and high. And if we look at us as an energy, we are all energies, and we are vibrating at a frequency. God is at the highest frequency, which is this light, this love, right? And we're trying to, from a human sense, trying to find a frequency that connects to him and connect to his love, or be like that love. That's why we say love is the highest frequency. Lead with love, talk with love, approach everything with love. So it's not that we have to forgive God because God lives within us. It's that we have to forgive ourselves to begin that journey of connecting with God. You see, the disconnect here is that we have disconnected within our hearts from God. Therefore, then he's a separate entity. And now we say, well, now I'm mad at you, God, because you're creating this mess for me. But that's where the disconnect is. You see, God is within us. If we're co-creating with him, he has created us as beacon of his light. Then we have to look at it as, okay, so what is within me that is holding me back? And what do I need to forgive myself? And that is the first step. And I'm so glad this person asked, because it was part of my talk and I missed it, is the forgiving of oneself. That is where it begins.
Thank you very much. I think final question is, I think the first person who asked a question has just asked another one based on it. So the question is, so is the Muslimness of a person, their Muslim identity, does that have anything to do with how they forgive or how they should forgive? And if not, why not?
Okay. So this is not so much a religious talk. I mean, I'm not a religious scholar or anything by, stretch of the imagination. However, being Muslim, I look at it as, what does Islam teach us about forgiveness? What are the examples perhaps the imams have left for us, or some of the scholars talk about? So I think in terms of whatever the belief is, whoever's listening, whether Muslim or not, is to see what your belief system within the religious bounds, if from the Muslim perspective, what does Islam say about it? And as I mentioned, there's many talks or many verses in the Quran talking about Al-Ghafur, being God is most forgiving. He talks about that. Therefore, there's an importance given to this point of forgiveness. And why do we, if we do something wrong, why do we ask God for forgiveness? So yes, of course, I think as Muslims, there are certain, not protocols, but certain things that we have in place that we can do. Whatever you feel aligned with, that feels right, is right. Because internally, we have an essence of what's right. If I said something that doesn't resonate with you, like you think, no, she's out to lunch, well, then it's not something that's true, that holds true for you right now. Doesn't mean that what I say is, gospel, right? I'm sharing with you a way, an opinion, something that I've learned. But in terms of religion, I think you have to look at what you believe about the religion and find certain ways or people or scriptures that can align with what you want to learn from it.
Thank you so much for your talk today, and thank you for all the people who've asked questions, whether on directly or on YouTube or on Facebook or on WhatsApp. Always great to get lots of questions, and thank you. It shows that lots of people are very interested in what you're saying, so thank you very much. Just before we end, a couple of quick announcements about the next few weeks. Next Friday, we have Rida Jichi, who will be speaking to us on the Wiladat of the 9th Imam alayhi salam, about an introduction to the Quranic science of congruence. The week after, on the Thursday, we have the Imam Ali alayhi salam's Wiladat by Sheikh Ahmed Hanif. On the Friday, we have Professor Nahle Karavinaini from Iran speaking to us about the women's role in narrating the Holy Prophet's hadiths. And the week after, we have Sheikh Jafar Ladak on the Thursday, and on the Friday, we have Usman Bugaji from Nigeria talking to us about Islamic education in Africa today. A real interesting, great series. So please do keep in touch with us. Please follow us on Twitter, on YouTube, Facebook, and subscribe to us on YouTube. And look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.